welcome script.
Wonderful.
Okay, and then, so we can, since it's cold enough, you should tell people that we can have masked conversation in the fellowship hall, but that, people must leave their masks on. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And yes, we will do some singing again also a skilled visual artist, and he's just here to play for you today. So enjoy.
This young man that played the prelude so beautifully, thank you so, so much, is a student of Joe Seals from Ossining High School, and his name is George Tuba. Now, please rise in body or spirit and join us in our song of gathering. In your grade hymnal, it's number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Good morning. My name is Jim Russell, and I am the Secretary of the Board of Trustees. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley. Whether you have been with this congregation a decade or more, or this is your first time visiting, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Whatever your heritage, we welcome you. We respectfully acknowledge the territory on which our church building sits as the ancestral homeland of the Munsee, Lenape, and Wappinger people. I have 3 announcements this morning. The Santa raffle continues for the next 3 Sundays. The drawing for the winning ticket will be after the December 12th service. Bring in your wreath for the Holiday Sanctuary wreath display by next Sunday. Thirdly, there is still time to donate to support our holiday gift giving program to Jan Peak and Hope Store. We will buy the gift cards or sweatshirt for you, so all you have to do is send a check to Rita and let Terry Lucan know the amount so we are sure to integrate it into our gift. Thanks for your support. For the most up-to-date information, please refer to our weekly e-newsletter and check our website frequently. The website is also the place where you can find contact information for our staff, Board of Trustees, and other congregational leaders. And please join us for conversation after the service. If you are present in the sanctuary, because it's so cold today, we're going to have the social time in the fellowship room after the service, but you must remain masked, and if possible, try to stay 3 feet to 6 feet away from each other while you're talking. If you're watching this on live stream, the link for the Zoom coffee hour can be found in the Saturday reminder email that you received. And if you're just recently joining us and would like to receive our e-newsletter, please email us with your name and we will make sure you are added to our e-news list. We can also answer any questions you might have. email us at uucroton@gmail.com, or fill out one of the yellow cards in the rack at the back of the pews and drop it in the collection plate. If you're here in the sanctuary, please silence your cell phones at this time. And once again, we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley.
Hello again. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ann Pearl, and I'm your worship associate today. At this time, I would like to introduce our guest preacher today, Benjamin Van Dyne. Benjamin is a PhD student in theology at Fordham University, where his work focuses on white and Christian supremacy and social solidarity in the face of violence and suffering. He is a graduate of the University of Virginia and worked as a community organizer in Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia, New York City, and Long Island before attending Union Theological Seminary, where he graduated with his Master of Divinity. He was raised in the UU Church of Arlington, Virginia, and continues to be active in local church communities. He lives in the Bronx with his 2 children. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Benjamin Van Dyne.
This line about studying violence and suffering always makes me sound like a real blast at parties. Well, good morning. It's good to be with you all again. This is my first time preaching back in a real physical pulpit since I was last with you all in mid-March 2020. So I'm very glad to bookend makes things sound more over than they are, but to transition back to physical presence here all with you. Our invocation this morning are words of Kathleen McTeague. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see there communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope, is hallowed by our presence together.
Good morning again. Our chalice lighting today are the words of Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Now, please join me in our unison affirmation. The words are in your order of service. Inspired by love, our mission is to seek our true nature, connect deeply and openly, and act for justice. Now please join me in, let us now bear witness to the joys and sorrows experienced in our community. If you have a personally significant joy or sorrow that you are willing to share, please come up to the microphone to my left, your right, and speak it loudly and clearly so that even with your mask on, we can all hear you. The microphone will allow our friends watching virtually to hear what you are saying. I will light a candle for each. When you are done speaking, please use the center aisle to return to your seat. If you would prefer to only have a candle lit without speaking, please just stand and I will light a candle for you.
Yesterday was the sad anniversary of the death of one of our beloved members, Gail Backer. Many of us still miss him.
Hi, my name is Ginny Stillman. I have 3 joys this morning. One is that Jim and I were able to celebrate Thanksgiving with one of his sisters who is battling cancer. She was able to come up from Virginia, and we all had a wonderful, small but rewarding family get-together. Secondly, I just want to make everyone aware of the beautiful pictures that we're seeing that will be coming down next week to be replaced by wreaths, but these paintings are all by Johann Hefner. Where is Joanne? So if you haven't taken the time to look at them, they're just gorgeous. Thank you. And then thirdly, I just want to say some of us are singing in a carol sing with other churches in Ossining and Briarcliff next Sunday, December 4th. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon at what I call the Farmers Market Corner in Ossining. But it'll be a wonderful hour of music around a Christmas tree. I hope you'll come and hear us. Thank you.
I just have a joy to share. We had a delightful Thanksgiving with some of our friends that we missed last year. We shared an excellent turducken, and then we got to chop down a Christmas tree together as a family, and it very scenically started snowing right as we finished. So we had a very nice Thanksgiving holiday.
I'm Kathy Williams. It was sad not to be here last Sunday, but it was a great joy to watch via live stream our son Peregrine preach at a Metropolitan Community Church in Minneapolis last Sunday on Transgender Remembrance Day.
Joy. I also spent Thanksgiving with my family, extended family, obviously for the first time since before the pandemic. Although we did have a Fakesgiving last year outside, that's another story. And all my kids, my grandkids, everyone was there, so it was truly, truly wonderful. Oh, I should light a candle for myself. Okay, there we go. Yes. We also acknowledge all the unspoken joys and sorrows held within the sanctuary of our hearts, and all those people who have yet to find a spiritual home where they too can share their joys and sorrows.
Good morning again. I invite you to enter into a spirit of meditation and prayer, to find a posture that brings you to awareness of your body. Not a relaxed posture, but one that brings you to some awareness of your body, maybe sitting a little higher up on your tailbone, maybe straightening your back a little bit, maybe uncrossing your legs. And to take a breath. Bring your awareness to the things that make you feel gratitude. the people you've been able to spend time with, the material things that make it possible for you to eat, to sleep safely, to gather with those you love. And then bring your attention to the things that trouble your conscience. Maybe even some of those blessings which never come to us quite as innocently as we would like. Take a breath. And imagine that you are taking those troubles and holding them in one hand. And then think, and maybe even say aloud, thank you. Because the chance to do otherwise is a gift. Now think about the last time you felt brave. What made it a time when your courage was required? How did it go? Can you remember what it felt like? Where in your body did you feel it? Where did that courage live? Hold to that. Let it grow in your awareness. Let's try to hold on to that today. To remember whatever place in your body feels like the place that courage lives. May it be so. As your awareness comes back to this room where we are gathered together, I invite you to join in singing our hymns, rising in body and or in spirit, to sing hymn 121, We'll Build a Land. He'll build a land where the captives go free. The arm of darkness dissolves all morning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, peace like an ever-flowing stream. A land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted, to all those who mourn, and will raise a night instead of ashes. We'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace. Peace like an ever-flowing stream. Build a land building up ancient cities, raising abundant stations from old, restoring ruined generations. We'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. A land where the mantles of praises down from spirits once trained and once weak, where all foundations and standing people. Oh, come build a land, my people we seek. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Well, while we were doing our joys and sorrows, I was thinking a little bit about a recent joy of mine, which is that my older son, Simon, who is 6, got his COVID shot last week. And I said the same thing to him when he was about to get the shot that my parents said to me, and that I think my grandparents said to my parents when they got their vaccinations, all the way back until vaccinations weren't a thing, which is, you were very brave. I don't actually know he was brave. It happened very fast. And he knew there was a donut waiting for him at the end of it. And to be honest, I'm not sure that my 6-year-old, who just got his vaccine, or my 4-year-old, who hopefully will be able to get it soon, know bravery or courage when they see it. And that's one of the unexpected joys for me, one of the things I didn't see coming about being a parent is that so many things that I take for granted are no longer obvious. Papa, what's courage? Damned if I know. How would I even talk about that? So that's what I want to talk a little bit about today, is this strange, obvious, weird, indescribable thing, courage. It's come up with my kids again because when we were stuck inside over Thanksgiving weekend, when it was rainy outside, we kept watching the same YouTube videos from Disney over and over and over again. And sometimes when the videos from Frozen would get to be too much, we would go back to a favorite from my childhood, the song Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. And so when I think of courage, when I think of how we see courage portrayed, it's that image. Many of you are probably picturing it now, burly Gaston, who comes to mind. The scene we keep watching is the one where Gaston, burly, muscular, a hunter, is sulking in a pub after being rejected by Belle, the beauty that will go on to fall in love with the Beast. Now, Gaston is the portrait of manhood, a hunter, a drinker, a carouser, and a competitor. And his fellows in the pub sing a song to restore his spirits, where they narrate all the great things about the kind of man he is. No one's slick as Gaston, no one's quick as Gaston, no one's neck is incredibly thick as Gaston's, for there's no one in town half as manly, perfect, a pure paragon. You can ask any Tom, Dick, or Stanley, and they'll tell you whose team they'd prefer to be on. So this is an image of courage, and Gaston's kind of courage is recognizable in how we talk about it. Of all the virtues, courage is the one that is sometimes particularly associated with men. Men are to be tough and strong and therefore courageous. But that association gives us a narrow picture of courage, a picture that sees courage as simply for fighting. Thomas Aquinas, the great Catholic theologian, wrote that the virtue of courage is so basic that we need it to exercise all of the other virtues. We cannot be faithful or loving or discerning or even prudent without courage. To be honest requires courage, especially when telling the truth is difficult. To be faithful requires courage, especially when it seems irrational. Courage is the form, that is, the shape of all the virtues, because to practice any virtue consistently takes the firmness of character that comes with courage. For Aquinas, courage is the strength of will that enables us to conquer fear. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the overcoming of it for him. It often happens that we know what we ought to do, but we're afraid to do it because of the consequences we may suffer. And courage ensures that we will have the firmness of mind and will to overcome our fear and do what is right and good. And beyond the narrowness of that masculine portrait of courage, I am struck by the bodily metaphors that we give it. A stiff upper lip, a straight backbone, a girded loin, a firm stomach. And as my own body mimics these words, stiffness, straightness, firmness, girdedness, I don't actually find myself resonating with those as courage. What I feel in my body when I say those words, stiffness, straightness, firmness, feels more like the response of my body to fear than courage. So what I want to say is that there's a portrait here of what a person is. A real person is a will that overcomes the responses of the body. That the portrait that we're given, both in all these metaphors of stiffness and straightness and firmness, and what we're given when Aquinas says that courage is the overcoming of fear, is that the real me is the one that overcomes what my body wants to do. A person who gets their way, even over themselves. So it is maybe not enough to say that courage is not the absence of fear, but overcoming it. Because that is also what rage is trying to do. That is what fascism is trying to do. They feed on that tension in the body, offering a way to release it, to transfer it to other people, to move it around, to make it useful. Now, maybe that sounds like an exaggeration. So listen to these words from the next verse. No one fights like Gaston, douses lights like Gaston. In a wrestling match, nobody bites like Gaston. You can cheat, it's fine. For there's no one as burly and brawny. As you see, I've got Gaston, has biceps to spare. Not a bit of him scraggly or scrawny, and every last inch of him's covered with hair. Now, I'm not gonna follow up with reciting Nazi poems. But if you look them up on your own, you'll be struck by how similar they are to the way that Gaston's body is described, obsessed with the musculature and body hair and agility of Aryan Germans, and their superiority to any other race. That's why it was such a humiliation when the black American Jesse Owens won so many medals at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. The fascist response to this was to say, yes, the Aryan German is biologically superior, but he cannot claim his destiny unless fear is overcome by will. Buck up, Gaston. Buck up, dear German. Let your natural superiority shine. And one of the accusations that was made by Nazis against Germany's Jews was that they were feminizing. They would get in the way of the natural virility of German men. Gaston is deeply insecure. The whole song is an effort by an entire pub full of people to cheer him up after being rejected by a woman. And that rejection leaves him totally incapacitated and afraid. He is burly, but he has to harness it for his will. He has to scapegoat the beast and take possession of the woman. He has to harness it for his will. The great Nazi propaganda film is called The Triumph of the Will. The pushing through, overcoming those bodily responses. Pushing through. Almost an act of violence toward one's own body, which is having all sorts of natural responses, but to hell with that, the will triumphs anyhow. So Gaston leads a mob with pitchforks, looking for the beast, the scapegoat. And in a sense, he is overcoming his fear. In a sense, he is courageous. But I don't think it's a kind of courage that we should look to as a model. That is why we think we need prisons and why we think we need guns in our homes, in our communities, abroad, but in our name. Every kind of violence we deplore could also take the name of overcoming fear, could take the name of courage, but would not live up to the values that this and other Unitarian Universalist communities claim. Interdependence, democratic process, respect for everyone's inherent worth and dignity. We need to say a little more, I think, about how courage overcomes fear, what the relationship is between the two. We need alternative portraits of courage. And one place I turn to are the diaries of the great poet, essayist, feminist, and civil rights champion, Audre Lorde. 17 days before she turned 50 and 6 years after she underwent a mastectomy for breast cancer, Lorde was told she had liver cancer. She declined surgery and even a biopsy, choosing instead to go on living her life and her purpose, exploring alternative treatments as she proceeded with her planned teaching trip to Europe. In a diary entry penned on her 50th birthday, Lorde reckons with the sudden call to confront the ultimate fear. "I want to write down everything I know about being afraid," she wrote. "But I'd probably never have enough time to write anything else. Afraid is a country where they issue us passports at birth and hope we never seek citizenship in any other country. The face of afraid keeps changing constantly, and I can count on that change. I need to travel light and fast, and there's a lot of baggage I'm going to have to leave behind me. Jettison cargo." The words of Audre Lorde, jettison cargo. This is a different image of courage than overcoming fear. It's a letting go, a sort of detachment, a becoming lighter rather than stiffer. And indeed, Lorde became lighter. By the spring, she had lost nearly 50 pounds. But she was brimming with a kind of crystalline determination to continue her work. She taught in Germany, immersed herself in the international communities of the African diaspora, and traveled to the world's first feminist book fair in London. "I may be too thin, but I can still dance," she exults in her diary on the first day of June. She dances with her fear in an entry penned 6 days later. "I am listening to what fear teaches. I will never be gone. I am a scar, a report from the front lines, a talisman, a resurrection, a rough place on the chin of complacency." Listening to what fear teaches. This is a different kind of courage. She continues, "When I'm open, I'm also less despairing. The more clearly I see what I'm up against, the more I am able to fight this process going on in my body that they're calling liver cancer. I know I can broaden the definition of winning to the point where I can't lose." So fear is not overcome, nor is it ignored. There is a sort of confrontation with reality that allows it to be present, that treasures even the fear that is experienced. The will doesn't triumph. It is in conversation, even dance, with fear. "When I'm open, I'm less despairing," Lorde writes. Here, too, is a portrait of what a human being is. If Gaston's and Aquinas' portrait of the human being is a will triumphing over a body, Lorde's portrait of courage is of a will that lives in the body, lives as a body, is a body, that discerns in its flesh. Think of an alternative world in which Gaston's response to rejection by Belle is not sulking, not leading a mob, but reflecting first on what he is really afraid of. Where the response of his companions in the pub is not to remind him how big his biceps are, but to encourage him when it turns out he is not the man he wants himself to be. Where that fear is a companion, neither the enemy nor the boss. But no, he gets further and further away from that with shallow congratulations and by leading the mob to violence and scapegoating. Lorde pursues greater connection. I am saving my life, she writes, by using my life in the service of what must be done. Tonight, as I listened to the ANC speakers from South Africa at the Third World People Center here, I was filled with a sense of self-answering necessity, of commitment as a survival weapon. Every person I have ever been must be actively enlisted in those battles, as well as in the battle to save my life. So there is a kind of equanimity here, a kind of attachment to reality, but detachment from its outcomes. Imagine again Gaston at the pub. Imagine the courage that dances with fear and puts it to good use and uses it for change. That's the kind of courage that I think we're going to need. Not only amidst the immediate danger of authoritarianism among us, but against the underlying fears that make it possible. The universe where Gaston can do that is not one where he is alone. It's a universe where he is with other people, brought along by them, challenged and comforted, but not indulged. That's the model for courage we have to give one another. So I close with these words from the Unitarian Universalist minister Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage. For deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. So it is, and so may it be. Amen. Now please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our next hymn, number 162 in the gray hymnal, "Gonna Lay Down My Sword and Shield."
Thank
Each week, we make an offering from the bounty that we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in a spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those who in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken by this community. Today's offering will also be shared with PrideWorks. Please refer to our e-newsletter or website for more information. You can make your donation in several ways. If present in the sanctuary, you may give cash or a check in the offering plate as it comes by. You may also scan the Q code in your order of service. From your homes, you can make your donation via credit card or PayPal using the links provided in the e-newsletter. Please remember to give a little extra to compensate for the 3% surcharge. Or, if you prefer, you can always mail us a check. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me in the dedication of the offering. The words are in your order of service. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. Please join me now in extinguishing the chalice. The words are also found in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, our benediction today are words of Sarah Moores Campbell. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Go in peace.
Please remain seated for our postlude, which will once again be by our guest pianist, George Tuba. He will be doing the Waltz in A-flat, Opus 64, number 1 by Frédéric Chopin.